Kerry, welcome. Mandy.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so what we're going to do, we're just going to start right off. Paul, we're going to start with you. Yeah.
Okie dokie.
Okie dokie. And the question sounds like a simple question, but it's actually, there's more than one person asked this, and it's why am I here? Why do I exist? Why was I born? Do you want to help us out with that one, Paul?
Okay. So, I've been thinking about it all week. Why did God make me? And, I've looked up verses, and I'm made in two ways. I'm made, and you're made, in a physical way and in a spiritual way. And I was made, by my parents, but God made me through them. And I'll just read a verse or two. God said, this is from Genesis 1:26, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let him have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. In Ephesians 2:10 it says, for we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. And Job, the Spirit of God has made me, and the breath of the Almighty gives me life. And, God gave us, as people in his image, the ability to take part in his creation, to look after it, and to be able to create as well. And when we live to be what he made us to be, then we glorify him, and we bring glory to one another. That's why he made us, so that we could be a part of what he is.
So it's like a relationship-based creation. It's interesting you're talking about that your mum and dad made you.
Yeah.
And that's true. God put into this process reproduction. But for some mums and dads, having a child is very hard. There are people in this room that are a supernatural miracle of how God actually created you, because it was a very difficult thing for that to even happen.
Every life is.
Yes.
It is a miracle. And I just thought, to sum it up, that God made me, made every person to be one through Christ, in him and in each other. And when we do that, then there's, it's exactly the way it's meant to be. But that's why we were made, to be part of that.
Yep. Very, very true. Any other thoughts? Because what we've got is we've got 6 questions, so I've given 2 questions to each person, but we're going to cross-pollinate. If you've got any other thoughts that you want to add, Mandy or Kerry?
I thought that was good.
Yeah? Okay. Well, Kerry, we might switch over to you. and the question that was given was, why do I still feel rejection? And that can be an ongoing thing. It can be a life challenge. That question could mean more than just, why do I still feel rejection? Why am I so sensitive to rejection? It can mean a lot of things, but what were you thinking, Kerry?
Well, that's one of the things I had to deal with, rejection. I felt it for a very long time, and it was something that, it was like, why can't I just get over this? If you've forgiven somebody, why can't you just get over it? It's kind of like a Christian stereotypical thing, like forgive and forget. But when you forgive and forget and don't actually process, you kind of bury it and it festers. Because if you don't process something, it's like a wound that's not been cleaned out. You can cover it up, but it's got dirt and stuff in it, and it gets worse with time. And rejection's a bit like that. I had issues with rejection when I was very little, and I had other things in my past as well that created a lack of worth, and that built on more rejection. And then I developed shame because I felt like it was my fault that I was rejected, and I always felt like I had to protect myself. So I started keeping people at a distance. So what happens is you get rejected more because people don't feel that you're very approachable, and it kind of becomes a cycle, and it can be a very painful cycle. And when shame's involved, I discovered that we need community to heal, because it's not something you can heal by just saying that you're worth something. It's hearing it from others that you're actually important and are cared about.
So is that like experiencing acceptance? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yep.
The ultimate acceptance is from God.
Yes.
And what he says about us. And it's really important to read his truth and believe it, because the enemy uses all the lies. Like you half feel like you're rejected before somebody has even rejected you, if it's something that's reoccurring. So basically coming to people for prayer is, like Pam did the other day, is really important, because you're bringing it out in the open. You're saying, I've still got this pain here, and you can be reinforced and encouraged and loved, but also having God's word repeated over and over, the truth, rather than the lies that you're not worthy.
Yeah, well, for those that weren't here last week, Pam shared how that for her whole life she's felt this sense of rejection. All sorts of reasons, but that's what she's felt. And a few weeks earlier she came forward and we prayed about that, and God just supernaturally healed her and set her free. So the memories are still there, but the pain attached to those memories has gone. And I think rejection's one of those tricky things, because I don't know, but there's a little scratch on my arm just here, and nobody cares and nobody can even see it, right? But I haven't done anything, and it's healed all by itself. But we were never designed by God to experience rejection. It wasn't something he wired into us to have the capacity to handle on our own. And without him, we just stay broken. We might squash it down and pretend it's not there, but it stays. And ever since we got kicked out of the garden, we've been struggling with rejection. But Mandy, you've got a take on that. Do you want to just share a little bit about back in the garden and the rejection and where this all began? Yep.
Yes. Was that what we're talking about this week?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think I've shared it before in one of my messages, but when God did eject Adam and Eve out of the garden, I remember reading that as a kid, and I was like, whoa! It was like when Susan and Edmund were told they couldn't return to Narnia. I was devastated for them. I'm like, if you've ever read C.S. Lewis, that was heartbreaking. Well, the garden was worse. I was like, this is awful. And it wasn't until adulthood, when I unpacked these verses more, that I saw both the justice and mercy of God at work in this one moment. And so when God does expel Adam and Eve out of the garden, it is the rightful, just result of their rejection of God. So they rejected God, and the consequences of that were to be ejected out of Eden. But the amazing thing in that is that if you go back and read those verses, God actually talks about it being so that they can't eat from the fruit of life, from the tree of life, because if they did so, they would become eternally separated from God. And God actually uses the consequences of sin, which is death, for us to have a chance to be eternally brought back to life with him. And so if he hadn't have ejected them out of the garden, he couldn't save them from themselves, he couldn't restore the separation they had created, and he couldn't redeem the rejection that they had given him. And so that is God, and you can't get your head around it, because that is justice and mercy working together, truth and grace, that God would use the very results of their rejection of him to rescue them. So I think that's pretty cool.
That's good. Any other thoughts, Paul?
I think sometimes we reject ourselves. I think there's a real trap, because Satan's always... He's using a truth that, when you look in the mirror, you know every wrong that you've done. But if you had a set of God goggles, you'd be able to see yourself the way he does. And I think, like, when I was sitting down there thinking I'm going to get up here and talk, and I'm thinking, why, God prepare me and, just spoke to him about my faults before I came up. And so that I could speak in the Spirit, because when we reject ourselves, we actually take away from what Christ has done. He did everything. And so while we were singing, I had an image, and in that image there was a sign that was just black. It was just a black sign. And I just kept praying to him about it, and he took the sign away and put me on a beach that was clear and beautiful. And, don't reject yourselves. Know that Christ has done everything that had to be done, and now you just are who you are. You are a son and a daughter of God. You're not having to do something. That is just who you are. So don't reject yourselves.
In that so special, it's just a few people sitting here. It could have been any one of us in a sense. And Paul's sitting back there and doubting the capacity to come and sit here. And God shows him that forgiveness and acceptance. It's pretty amazing, isn't it? It's pretty special.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yes. It's interesting. I've had this little conversation with Paul, a private conversation. I'm just going to share it now. But Paul has amazing stories of how God has used him in the past. And I said to Paul, Corals, and my prayer for you is that would shift into the present. And even last week, down on the beach, God set you up, the little God set up, where you could sow into someone's life. And then here you are today, God's showing you new revelation, something special, significant for you, right? It's how God works. Yeah. And that forgiveness, one of the questions that came in was, why do I struggle so much to forgive, especially the people who I want to forgive the most? So, Mandy, that's a question for you to have a chat with.
Yep. I've actually got a picture of a book that I'll get them to pop up at the end. Hopefully Dad sent that through last night.
I did.
That's
yes.
helpful. Why do we find it hardest to forgive the people we want to forgive the most? First, I would say probably because the people that you want to forgive the most have hurt you the most. So the reason you are finding it easy to forgive others is because they didn't hurt you as much, and you don't have as much anger or as much pain, or potentially as serious enough consequences to the person that you're trying to forgive the most. So we know that God tells us in his word to forgive. And so forgiveness is a choice. It's a decision that you may not make, but it's your choice to make. But that is very, very different from the emotions attached to what happened. And there's an amazing book which, if any of you are wrestling with forgiveness, I don't know if they've got the image anywhere. There we go. This book, Forgiveness is a Choice. Don't be put off by the title, because when you're wrestling with forgiveness, you're like, yeah, I know that. Like, tried that. So I was like, even I didn't want to read that at first. I was like, I know forgiveness is a choice, but I can't make it. This is a brilliant, very easy to read, very simple book written by a psychologist. It's not a Christian book, but he is a Christian, and it's all God's principles in the book. And it literally will walk you step by step through a process of activities and asking yourself questions that will lead you to the place where you will be able to make the decision to forgive. But I'll just give you in 30 seconds a little bit of what that book will help you with. The biggest blockage to forgiveness is admitted anger and when you haven't faced your anger and pain. So you can choose on a surface level of your brain to forgive that person, but we can only emotionally forgive and feel the feelings of forgiveness to the same extent that we have faced the very real injustice, anger, grief, and pain that is attached to that person or what they did. And so until you admit the pain and the brokenness that has come into your life because of what happened, you can't actually feel the emotions of forgiveness attached to the choice. You may have already made the choice, but the reason your emotions aren't following suit is because you have not processed the depth of the pain. And so what this book does, it helps you safely, step by step, face your anger. They reckon that that's one of the biggest blockages. So many people are convincing themselves they're not angry, or they feel guilty. They feel like they have no right to be angry, or they don't even know what to do with the level of their anger. Because depending on what's happened, the consequences could be so severe. Your anger is so justified. So forgiveness is not saying that what's happened was okay. Forgiveness is not the same as trust. They are two completely different things. Forgiveness is not the same as intimacy. It may not be appropriate that you have a relationship with the person you need to forgive. So forgiveness doesn't equal relationship. Forgiveness is releasing yourself from the prison that their actions have put you in. And forgiveness is taking yourself off the judgment seat and acknowledging that God alone is going to judge the person for those actions. Forgiveness is releasing vengeance to God. It is releasing justice to God. And it is setting you free from crippling resentment and anger. But I just really want to encourage anyone who's struggling with that. I got given this book in a counselling session with a psychologist, and he told me to go and do the book and write down all the people, and I had about 70 people to forgive. So I was like, I filled pages of a journal
Was I on that list?
Probably. I'm sure you featured somewhere in there. But yeah, really encourage you. It's a very simple, easy to work through book if you need any help with that.
I can remember years ago we were in a business arrangement and the person did the wrong thing by us, and as a result we ended up losing everything we ever owned. And I can remember sitting out at Jeff's place and at the table, and there were some beautiful Christians that meant really well, and they're trying to help me with this pain I felt and this forgiveness that I couldn't do. And they're saying to me, now you need to forgive. And I knew that. What they're telling me wasn't helping, and in the end, I just jumped up and I screamed in anger, and I picked up this cup that Jeff had made, this ceramic cup, and I grabbed it and I just threw it through this glass sliding door, shattered the door. I said, but you don't understand the pain. And sometimes until someone hears your pain, you aren't ready for one more step. And I discovered that forgiveness was a process. And every time that I've got a great imagination, I could really create ways to get back at this person. I could spend the rest of the day telling you about the ideas I had. They're great ideas. But every time I had to just keep this process of going. When I'd feel knotted up inside, if someone mentioned his name, I would go into this internal thing, and I'd just say, God, help me out. Help me, God, forgive him. And I remember. And
those feelings that rise up is not evidence that you haven't forgiven. Those feelings are just evidence that there's a bit more pain and anger and grief to process. So it's just your subconscious letting you know there's a bit more pain there that we need to just visit and get set free from. And it is a process. So we forgive and process the pain in layers.
And so I can't tell you when I crossed that line, but I remember I was driving one day and someone rang me and told me that this person who had done the wrong thing by us had now lost everything they owned. And I started crying for him. And I realised I was set free. I don't know quite where that line got crossed, but I know the difference between living in unforgiveness and the freedom to even feel compassion for this mongrel. Yeah. Kerry, I think you've got a question to do with memories, and memories can be anything from the past. And how do we stop memories coming back into our head that we don't want there? How do we do that? Is that something like the question?
Yep. Something
Yep.
like that.
Something.
This was a tough one for me
Yes.
because I was like, no, I've dealt with those memories. I don't want to go back there. So it depends on the memories. There's lots of different reasons why we don't want to revisit memories. Sometimes it's things we've done in the past that we regret, and there's guilt attached, and we haven't processed even forgiveness from God properly. So we can relive that until we process it. But sometimes it's something that we didn't do, something that happened to us that we have to process, that we keep reliving because it was a painful thing. So I had a painful thing when I was a little kid, and a lot of trust was lost, and I instantly forgave and never processed and buried it, and thought I had to cover it up pretty much because otherwise it would cause lots of problems, even though I wasn't the one that did it. But it's interesting how it keeps resurfacing because I hadn't dealt with it. I remember doing a Safe Churches, probably in my late 30s, and it made me sick. I went home, I didn't sleep. I was so stressed out, and it was all because I hadn't processed stuff when I was a kid. And I ended up with shingles because my body it had just stuffed it down deep. And I had to forgive all over again, but I had to actually dig down and find what the things were that I had to forgive for, because it was a surface forgive and forget kind of thought to start with. But it was realising how much I'd lost and how much fear it grounded in my life.
And I guess that's what comes with maturity. When you're a kid, how can you forgive? You don't understand the consequences. You don't have a clue how much this is impacting you. But as you get older, you start to realise the weight of that. And you said something before about processing, you've used that then, but to deal with it. Well, how do you deal with it? How have you dealt with it?
I wrote my list.
Have you? It's about 3 books worth.
No, it's just notes and a couple of scripture, but it was just for my head.
Yes.
First of all, for anything that's reoccurring in our minds, because that thing doesn't reoccur in my mind anymore, it's something that God healed fully. And now I can look back and go, that wasn't a pleasant part of my life, but it doesn't define me anymore. Because a lot of pain can, if you feel it and own it, it can start defining who you are and how you respond to everything. So the first part was trusting God, because He came to heal the brokenhearted. He wanted to make us whole. And so He took all our pain and our suffering on Him. So if He's done that, why are we carrying it? So trusting Him, that His heart for us, His truth, His love is genuine and is not broken like people can be. So first was trusting God, because when you run away from God, you end up in a bigger mess. The second was working out the forgiveness again. Do I have more to forgive? See, I'm going through my list quick.
You're doing good.
And the third was I don't need to do it alone, because when you feel so broken, it can be any of the lies that God gives you. Oh, not God, the enemy gives you. Down to it really affects your identity when you've been hurt or you've got memories. Sometimes it's flashbacks, and the only way to get rid of them is to pray through them with somebody else.
That's a very powerful concept, but it's something that is not natural for many of us, because some of us are much more private, aren't we, Coral, than other people? I have to run things through Coral as my little filter sometimes. But I love in James chapter 5 where James teaches that our secrets make us sick. And he talks about bringing our stuff to each other, not to anyone, but to the right person, and sharing our stuff. And then it says that prayer of that person brings healing, not forgiveness, but healing, right?
Yeah.
And it's a sense of prayer being a ministry of God to bring healing. Yeah.
Yeah. It's that openness to not hide it anymore.
Yeah.
Sometimes we are responsible for what it is that's coming back, and we need to deal with it and ask for forgiveness. Like Mandy was saying, she needed to forgive a bunch of people. Sometimes we have to actually go and ask for forgiveness and heal and restore things so that there can be peace there. And receiving God's healing is important, because sometimes we can basically go, well, I've done all the steps and I still feel crap. But sometimes we just need to rest in God. Sometimes sitting still and praising Him just heals the spirit, because we are spirit. And sometimes we just need that. We need a filling of His love.
And that can come in so many ways, can't it? Like even this morning, there's a few people that arrived early and the band is practicing, and you all weren't here, but the people I was talking to, they said, it's just nice to come and it's quiet and sit before church actually starts. And while the band was practicing, that was actually ministering to people. And then when we had it live, that's God ministering to us as well as we corporately. Yep.
Yeah, it's that intimacy with God. It's
Yes.
just understanding we're His kids and He wants to give us a hug.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. And God's word.
Yes.
It gets rid of the lies when we repeat God's word over and over until it actually sinks right in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Fantastic. Now, to go to a God to help you with that, what if, like, I know the question you've got there is about why doesn't God make Himself more obvious? And we can think, well, if I'm going to go to God for healing, why doesn't He just make Himself a little bit more flesh and blood and more obvious? And did you have any thoughts on that question? Because it's on your list. You grab your microphone.
Yeah, I sort of thought, I looked up scriptures again, but thought that, God is more obvious than people would give Him credit for. And a lot of that stems out of pride and choice, because as soon as people have to acknowledge God, then that changes everything. Because as soon as you acknowledge God, that makes everything that has happened, the fact Christ walked the face of the earth, there's two choices: to follow Christ or to follow Adam. So while you're in denial, you don't have to choose, supposedly. But it says in Romans 1,
you need almost a stand and a table, and you're very well prepared, Paul. I'm impressed.
Romans 18:21. The wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all the godlessness and wickedness of people who suppress the truth by their wickedness. Since what may be known about God is plain to them, because God has made it plain to them. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. And so, just by creation alone, people know there is a God, but it's being hidden by the wickedness, and also there's a veil that's been pulled down over the eyes, which starts with Moses in Exodus, and so it says it makes the people dull and unaware of it. But I think, that's what's important, and ties back into the first one, knowing why God made me, is when we're being who we are, then it makes to others obvious that God is real.
Yes.
So we have a role being God's children and being one in making God obvious to the people around us.
Yep, that's very, very true, isn't it? It is, to represent Jesus through our life. It's a powerful thing. And I think also, because God is spirit, the essence of who you really are isn't a chunk of meat. Who you really are is spirit, and so it needs spirit-to-spirit relationship, and you don't need to see God to relate to him from you, who you really are, through to who really God is, We're just going to finish off with one question, which seems a little bit different to every other question. And it's a question about Judas and why Jesus picked a loser in the team, Why he picked someone, if he knew in advance that he would betray him, why include him? Why empower him to do miracles when the 12 went out and the 72 went out? And why did Jesus pick someone that would actually betray him? And Mandy, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I think when you think about that question, you might be also asking, or it's kind of linked to the question, why did God create us at all if he knew outside of time that we were going to muck it up with our free will? Why did God give us free will? If you were God, would you have given you free will? I probably would not have given me free will. Like, she doesn't need that. That's not going to help her very much.
We could have taken it off you for about 3 or 4 years during those teenage years. Would have been a smart idea, I think.
Yeah, but God gave us free will because without free will, we do not have the capacity to love, because love is a free will choice. If you are forced to love, that's not love. And if you didn't choose, it's not love. And so you can't have a relationship, a true relationship and true intimacy and true love without free will choice. And because, as Paul has said, God created us to partner with him, to create with him, to be in relationship with him. In order for that to be reality, he had to create us with free will. And you see through the whole Bible, God respects the free will he gave us. He respects the agency that he gave every human being. He does not override our free will. He uses it, even the evil that we've chosen to bring into the world upon one another or upon ourselves. He miraculously uses evil for good. But if you read the Bible, it's very clear he doesn't step in and prevent all the wrong choices we've made. And so then specifically to Judas, that's like an individual example of the whole way this world works. God not preventing us and blocking our free will. God does miracles, but if God was to step in and prevent every wrong choice every person is about to make, eventually he would have actually eradicated free will and would have completely changed the whole intent of why he made us as human beings. And so the Gospels show us that at some stage, Jesus was told by God that Judas would be the one that betrayed him. We don't really know how much Jesus knew or when Jesus knew. We just know at some stage he did know, and he didn't prevent Judas. He actually says, go and do it. And so, did you want to add anything before I keep going?
No, we will wind up, but I think very simply, I think it's encouraging. Personally, I find it encouraging because Jesus isn't that fussy sometimes, you know. He'll use anyone. Look around, you know.
I think part of the question was, thank you, because I needed to regather my thoughts.
Yes.
So I was like, I need to hand over to Dad for a sec. Part of the question was, how could Judas do miracles if he didn't believe? And I think the thing is, Judas had to have some form of belief to follow Jesus in the first place. When Jesus called the disciples, they could have said no. They had to make a choice to step out in faith and to follow this Jesus guy. And Judas did. And so I'm sure he was part of the miracles with the disciples. He had responsibilities in the group. Somewhere along the line, the enemy started whispering in his heart. And somewhere along the line, he started agreeing with the lies of the enemy. And that was when Judas made the awful choice to betray Jesus. But it wasn't this black and white, you know, he never believed, or no, we all wrestle with lies, and we all wrestle with choosing to agree with the enemy's lies. And Judas did, to the point that he betrayed Jesus. But afterwards, he obviously understood truth enough to know that he'd made the wrong decision. He was grief-stricken. He was heartbroken to the point that he took his own life because he must have known how wrong what he did was. And so even after he betrayed Jesus, he was still able to know that it was wrong.
And I guess the difference between Judas and Peter, who both betrayed Jesus, is that Judas did not come back to Jesus because there's nothing he did that Jesus wouldn't have forgiven him for. And Peter, he could restore, because Peter, even though he ran away, came back. And wherever you are in your life, when we come back to God, forgiveness we talked about, healing from memory we talked about, understanding why we exist, it's all relationally connected to your life and the God who made you. So we're going to just get the band back up. Can we do that Walsey song again, whatever it's called? I like that one. And
Tell us what number it was.
the last song you sung, yes, yeah, number 3. And just really good having you all here today, and all those online. Fantastic. Thanks, Paul.